Hello. It is my fourth day in Berlin. Wanted to just document everything that's happened in this first half week because um it's been an experience. I wouldn't say it's been the best or most surprising experience. It's mostly just like a new experience. Um, I'm kind of blabbing now, so I'm just going to start from the top. I had a layover in Lisbon that was a lot longer than I expected. My flight out of New York was supposed to be at 3:30. It got pushed to 5:30 because the plane hadn't arrived in Newark yet. So I got to the airport around, I don't know, like a couple hours before my flight. So I ended up spending 4 hours there, just waiting. I had TSA pre-check because I have global entry, so I flew through security a lot faster than expected. Thankfully, was able to talk to friends and family while at the airport to kill some time before boarding my flight. And I really enjoyed the experience waiting for the flight because it was an international terminal. And I really enjoyed seeing the clothes that people wore. One girl had a crop top, which I thought was very impressive because usually when I get on a long flight, I try to wear my thickest layers to save space in my suitcase. So for her to wear a crop top at the airport was kind of a flex to me because it meant that she was packing very light. And it's also winter time, so I try to maybe layer up on my thickest sweaters at the airport so I look a little frumpy for the sake of practicality. The flight itself was mediocre with TAP Airlines. It's the budget airline with Portugal. I was expecting like a goodie bag because usually on these long flights they give you socks and a toothbrush in a cute little packaging thing, but nothing, which is fine. It's more eco-friendly this way, so that's how I thought about it. There were pillows and blankets on the flight. Only one meal was served, no snacks. The flight was also a lot faster than I had anticipated, which meant I didn't sleep at all, which is quite a rarity because I typically sleep pretty easily on flights, but there was a man in front of me who was pretty big and snored the whole way through his sleep, which prevented me from sleeping, and I took out my earplugs after kind of holding out and thinking that I didn't need to get them. So by the time I did get them, there was maybe 2 hours left in the flight. So I landed around 7 a.m. and left at 5:30 or so, which meant the flight was like 7 hours, not even, like maybe 5 hours to Portugal. Very accessible, and you need a negative COVID test to negative PCR test 72 hours before your departure, or a negative antigen test 48 hours before your departure. And this is end of January, so just for your reference. And you also need to fill out a form for Portugal. The airline gives you a link to this form, and that's even if you're transiting through Portugal, not just staying there. Then I was at the airport from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. For my layover. I actually was supposed to have a flight from Lisbon to Berlin at 7:35, but given that I landed at 7 a.m., I had a new itinerary that they gave me upon checking in to the flight at Newark. So they knew that I wasn't able to make it. And landing in Lisbon, there was another line where they gave you a blue concert type bracelet to just verify that you are negative for COVID. And it was basically like an extra line between getting off the flight and getting in the really long line for connecting flights. And that line I was in for about an hour. I would say there were maybe 100, 150 people in front of me in this line. So no way would I have been able to make my flight to Berlin because it was in its last call by the time I got off my flight. The Lisbon airport was very pretty though, and there was a lot of beautiful looking food there. I tried to get lounge access to compensate for the lack of sleep that I experienced, and just this next layover that was like 12 hours at the airport. They don't treat lounge access as compensation. That was what was explained to me, but I did qualify for a meal voucher. So I got 2 vouchers, total value of 16 euros due to the delay in travel. So I was able to eat some food there. So yeah, it was quite a beautiful experience at the Lisbon airport, and I also slept in the second floor of the airport outside the lounge because I can't go inside the lounge, but at least I can sleep outside of it, and my duffel bag made for a pretty good pillow. And then I was able to wake up a couple hours before the flight boarded. So that flight to Lisbon from Newark was pretty empty, I would say maybe 15% capacity, 25% tops. Definitely not 25 actually. I had the whole row of 4 to myself. And then the flight to Berlin from Lisbon was completely packed, which was maybe a little surprising. It was an Embraer, and there was a mix of people, looked like they were vacationing, most likely over the weekend, because that flight of mine was Monday night. And I did notice a girl that was on my flight from Newark, so shout out to her as well for kind of going through that same long 30-hour transit process that I did. So I landed around 11 p.m. on Monday, and again fell into one of those hustle scams of taxi drivers who wait outside the exit to get you onto their taxi. So I'm not sure why, but they don't queue up properly with the other taxis. And so I got into the taxi. It was 65 euros. It was fine. I think it was, I mean, that is the standard price, so I'm not sure how much of a scam it is. I think it's just like a hustle, because I, as the passenger, didn't wait with the other flight people to get one of the cars that were already waiting outside the entrance or the exit, but I walked with him across the street of the airport to like an outdoor lot where people park their cars to pick up their friends or whoever from the airport. So it was a 40-minute ride from the airport to my place of stay, and I basically booked this place for 2 months. Incredibly overpriced, but the thing is with Germany, I needed to book a place that would allow for address registration, and that's done through landlord approval. So I can't just find a sublet on Facebook where someone's leaving their room for a couple months. I need something much more official that's in between a sublet and a formal living place. So I'm in this place called a Living Hotel, which is northeast of Prenzlauer Berg. Definitely mispronouncing that. I'm by a lake, which I thought would have been fun, but it just ends up being kind of like a muddy walk to the tram stop that I get on to go to work. But still quite pleasant. I thought the most interesting part of my walk were the crows that are here, but they're not crows per se. They almost look like emo puffins because they're gray and black, they're a little derpy, they're very fuzzy, and I find them quite adorable when they kind of jump walk to travel. So that's kind of my morning. And another thing that I noted is that on my way back home, it's pretty much pitch black by the lake, and I'd be concerned if I were in the US, but I know the US is probably one of the most dangerous first world countries out there, so I'm pretty okay walking in the dark by a lake in Berlin. And I live to tell the tale, and the lights are like an amber color as opposed to those big bright street lights that I'm used to in the US, which probably promote light pollution, and I don't know why, and just like a brighter vibe, but with the low amber lighting of the public street lights, it's a little eerier. But I can see, since the city is probably safer than what I'm used to in cities in the New York, especially New York City, maybe the amber lighting is all that we need here. And that tram ride from my living hotel is about 30 minutes to where I work, which is near, I guess, the center of the city. It's close to Alexanderplatz, and I have no idea about the neighborhoods right now, but I'm not even sure how the city is composed, but I noticed that it's not really like New York where all the blocks, everything on the ground floor is a store or a bodega or a coffee shop, but the first floor is still apartments. Again, I have very limited knowledge of Berlin right now, seeing as I only wake up and go to work. And today, Thursday, the 27th, is actually my first day taking a walk and going to a place that was not work. So I went to a grocery store and had no idea what to buy. And before I forget, I haven't had really good food yet because I just don't know where to go. My first day of work, my coworker took me to this cafeteria-like restaurant where we ordered Thai food, and it was absolutely disgusting, and I just had a bad taste in my mouth the whole day. But it was probably from like the banana I ate at work, because every Monday there's fruit or something, or I mean there's just fruit in a bowl every day of the week, typically oranges, apples, and bananas, and they just don't taste the same. For some reason the video stopped. I'm recording this in photo booth, so it's extremely rudimentary, but basically the bananas taste very weird, slightly synthetic. I don't think I'm gonna have a banana again until I see one that looks relatively okay, but they just seem off or manufactured in a way that I don't find acceptable. Neither the apple. It was like a golden yellow apple. Also tasted quite funky. Not funky like rotten, but funky because it carried an aroma or like some sort of chemical that I just wasn't used to in my fruits. So yeah, work is going well. I like the new team. The office is nice. They're on the 8th floor. There's a balcony. I don't anticipate going to the office every day. I went on Tuesday and Wednesday, so Tuesday being the day after I got off from my flight. I ended up sleeping at around 2:30 a.m. and I still was able to get into work at 9:15 a.m. and took the tram for the first time. No hiccups, thankfully. But I think I'm gonna lay low this week, seeing that I just got off an international flight and I would hate to pass Omicron on to anybody. And on the tram, I was frantically Googling how to buy a ticket while I was on the tram because I knew that there could be fines if I didn't properly do something. So on the actual tram, there's also a ticket booth that you can buy a ticket from, and it's €3. And I bought a single ticket, and I also saw another machine where I can validate the ticket, and I think it ended up being that if you buy a single ticket, maybe you don't need to validate it because it just knows that that's the ticket you're using on that train. But if you buy a multi-use or multi-day ticket, then you have to validate it, because by validating it, you're saying you're using it, as opposed to just buying a ticket that's not used if it's not validated. So it's kind of, you just bought it and it's just there to be used. So you have to validate it. Or now I have a week-long ticket, unlimited rides, and I bought it through the tram app or the public transportation app, and it's just a QR code. So I buy it through the app on my phone, and that it generates a QR code that I later save to my Apple Wallet. And basically, anytime some sort of public transportation authority shows up on the tram, you flash the QR code to them so that they can scan it or something to show that you're legally on the tram and you paid for your fare. And I've dodged public transportation police before and failed in San Francisco, and I ended up paying like $140 each time. The second time the police officer said, "Didn't I catch you last time?" So from these two experiences in San Francisco, I'm not going to repeat that in Berlin. I'm just going to do the legal thing this time. And I also believe there's a yearly unlimited ticket as well, which is kind of like an ID card that you keep in your wallet. But I haven't gotten that yet. And with COVID, everyone is wearing a pretty official face mask. So it's not just a surgical mask. It's the one that's kind of triangular and points forward, which seems a lot more protective. I think I could have picked one up after getting off at the airport, but it was 11 p.m. or like 10, so I wasn't quite in the right mind to look for the welcome center to pick up this face mask. But I do have a surgical mask, so it is fine. Do not use a cloth mask. You're probably going to look ridiculous. No one has that. It just has no place here. I haven't seen anyone do that. I haven't seen any under the nosers, and I'm very thankful for that. Everyone seems to follow the face mask wearing pretty carefully, especially in public transportation, and people don't wear face masks when they're walking out in public on the streets, so that makes sense to me. And to enter any establishment like a restaurant, there is some COVID Pass app that's available. I think it's probably Germany-wide, even EU-wide. I'm not sure about that, but once you are vaccinated, you probably get some sort of paper. Anyway, you end up with a QR code again in this COVID app, so the restaurant will scan the QR code on their iPad or tablet and also ask to check your ID to basically check that you are vaccinated. So that's a far cry from what we have in the US, which is this piece of paper that the size is neither here nor there, and it's written in pen, so much more permanent than a pencil, but easily faked, and it's also different state to state, whereas with this COVID pass, it seems much more of a unified technological effort to track vaccination, and currently there's no way for me to get it if I'm vaccinated, since I was vaccinated outside of the EU. And I don't really think that there is a way, or there will be a way for me to get the COVID Pass app, because like, how can they verify that my card is real in order for me to get a QR code and download the app? I haven't experienced any trouble with this yet. I've only had to show my vaccination card once because I haven't really gone out. It's only been 4 days, but I am very curious to see how my vaccination card and ID combo will go when I go to other restaurants, museums, bars, etc. So now today is Thursday. I am work from home, and I will allow myself to go out for a walk for lunch and enjoy the beatific, foggy, gray, windy, cold weather outside. And thank you for watching or listening. I'm not really sure what exactly the goal is with these videos. I think it's going to be helpful for me to just document orally my learning so far, but maybe it'll be helpful to someone visiting or moving to Berlin, because it's rather hard, but I've gone to a lot of different countries, so I think I have the wherewithal of adapting and not being such a blundering fool when moving to a new country. And I guess next up is just getting more settled administratively and physically, and I'm hoping in March or something I can take German classes, because I did go to the grocery store today and I felt like a complete idiot because an older man was talking to me, and I just had to do that classic American thing and say in my most Californian accent that I'm sorry, I don't speak German, and I would not like to be that person and make someone think that, oh no, everyone I speak to is not even speaking German anymore in the neighborhood that I grew up in. So I would like to speak German for that reason, or just conversationally at like an A2 level is fine. All right, thank you, and have a lovely week.